and welcome Honourable Richard Wynne, Minister for Planning, Housing, and the new Minister for Multicultural Affairs. Congratulations, Minister. We look forward to all the good work that you're going to do with us.
Thank you and good morning. What a beautiful Melbourne Monday morning. Thank you so much for being a part of today. I also, as is our tradition, want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and we pay our respects to elders past and present. Can I thank you firstly, Jennifer Hubbard, the President of the Jewish Community Council of Victoria, of course a former parliamentary colleague of mine some years ago now, and obviously the Honourable Bruce Atkinson, MLC President of the Legislative Council, who's with us today. Bruce and I were together over the weekend at events, and it's always a pleasure to be working here with Bruce. I do hope that tomorrow brings much favour to my colleague Nina Taylor, who we hope will be elected tomorrow as our representative in the Southern Metropolitan Region. So Nina, it's a delight to have you with us today, and we look forward to, I'm sure, a very distinguished parliamentary career for you as well. I think our councillor was here, perhaps Councillor Philip Lee Liu is, I think, at least on his way here from the City of Melbourne. The Honourable Rod Randall, Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of Victoria, and Deanna Bryant, Family Court former Chief Justice. It's an absolute pleasure to be here because the Immigration Museum is an incredibly important part of the fabric of our community. It is a much loved institution. It is a beautiful building and one that houses, I guess, the history of our state. It speaks to what the extraordinary wave of migration to this country from, frankly, the 1880s right through till today has made Victoria a richer, a better and a more diverse community. And for us to have this unique facility here, perhaps not the only one of its like in Australia, but certainly I would say absolutely the best, and it's a fantastic asset to our city. I particularly wanted to thank the organising committee, and particularly the Jewish Community Council of Victoria, Australian Intercultural Society, and the Australian Union of Jewish Students, who, of course, as we know, have got an extraordinary history of activism and advocacy right across literally generations. And I want to particularly signal them out today, and Benevolence Australia for your support and organising this event today. Obviously, Sarah, I heard your interview on the FAME program, which was a fantastic interview. I think last Friday it was, and it was just an opportunity again for us to speak about just how important these events are, because it provides, I think, a really important emphasis and a focus for the community on what we have to address, which are some very, very serious and systemic issues that our community has to confront. So this is the first of the training sessions, which will be held across Melbourne and particularly in regional Victoria, to educate and empower others to be active bystanders when confronted with Islamophobia and, of course, anti-Semitism. And the Victorian Government is proud to support such an important initiative, such as the Active Bystander Training Program. We funded this program as an early initiative under the anti-racism plan being developed. We are very committed to supporting the safety, inclusion and contribution of Victoria's Jewish and Muslim communities. For many Victorians, and these are amazing figures, as much as 1 in 5 racism and race-based discrimination is a part of their daily lives. As the former Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, I had an Aboriginal man who was my advisor, and he was married to an Aboriginal woman who was quite dark-skinned, and his wife was a lighter-skinned woman. And we were talking one day about what it meant for him to be an Aboriginal man in Melbourne. And he said to me, he said, "Minister," he said, "every single day of my life I experience racism every single day. And I said, well, so Charles, what does this mean? He said it can be the simplest thing. He and his wife might be standing in the queue at the sandwich bar, waiting to be served, waiting to buy a sandwich or something, and he said, every time, she will be chosen to be served in front of him, even if he was in front of her in the queue. And I was so shocked by this, that at the most basic of levels, that we as a community, that he, every single day, in almost every single interaction he might have in that day, there was a racist undertone to that. And that's the sort of thing that both shocks but actually reminds us of what we have to do and our collective responsibility to call this sort of behaviour out. It is truly something to reflect upon. Of course, rooted in racism, incidents of Islamophobia and anti-Semitism are unfortunately experienced by many Victorians. Sometimes rarely, or sadly, sometimes much more often. And we recognise this as a serious issue. Many who have experienced these damaging behaviours across a range of settings, including obviously their workplaces, schools, sport, universities, transport, and indeed in public spaces. Just last week, the Scanlon Foundation released this year's Mapping Social Cohesion report, and I'm sure many of you have seen it. While findings included that support for multiculturalism stands almost as high as ever, at 85%, there is still genuine concern, in particular regarding immigration and negative attitudes towards Muslims, with it being significantly higher at an average of 24%. And I know, having Bruce with me today, we've done a number of functions together since I've had the honour of being the Minister for Multicultural Affairs, and I said this only on Saturday at Federation Square when we were celebrating a wonderful African event, that there is no difference. There's not a crack of difference between the views of the current opposition and indeed the government when it comes to multiculturalism and when it comes to migration here to Victoria. We are a richer, we are a better place for that, and our government and the opposition will always stand shoulder to shoulder when it comes to immigration, because we know it has made Victoria a richer and a better place for that. We know that Muslims in our community, men and women, many times in the presence of young children, have and are still experiencing verbal and physical abuse. It is concerning that current research indicates Islamophobia remains a significant problem here in Victoria. The Scanlon surveys have found consistently over a number of years that approximately 25% of Australians, 25%, have a negative attitude towards Muslims. While quantitative data is still limited, anecdotal evidence from the Muslim community strongly shows that incidents of Islamophobia have been increasing. Some key findings of the Islamophobia in Australia report 2014-16, which was released last year, found Islamophobia is more prevalent than official statistics suggest. It indicates that lone Muslim women were more frequently the victims of offline incidents, and women who ventured out on their own were almost 3 times more likely to be harassed. And verbal abuse and threats accounted for 60% of reported incidents. This included all online incidents as well. The most alarming findings demonstrate in 75% of those reported situations, nobody intervened, even though half occurred in crowded public spaces. Any research published by the Executive Council of Australian Jewry indicates anti-Semitism remains a significant issue for Jewish communities as well in Australia. The Council's 2018 report on anti-Semitism in Australia indicates that over the last 12 months, 366 anti-Semitic incidents were recorded in Australia, an increase of almost 60%. This includes increases in harassment, vandalism, threats by email, telephone, and of course disgusting posters that are put around the place as well. The report states there were 156 attacks and 210 threats recorded. It is understood a rise in extreme right-wing activity is known as one of the leading causes of these staggering and deeply troubling statistics. And social media, of course, as we know, remains a platform and conveyor of anti-Semitic expressions and propaganda. These reported anti-Semitic incidents were most likely to occur on the street or at a workplace, a sporting event, at school or university, or outside a Jewish building. The rise of these appalling incidences is deeply concerning, and frankly, nobody deserves to be treated so abhorrently. It is a sad fact in this day and age that any person is persecuted simply because of their faith and their beliefs. It's clear to us, and it's clear to everybody here today, that racism, in which Islamophobia and anti-Semitism are rooted, harms individuals and societies and is deeply, deeply corrosive at every level. It can and does humiliate, devalue and exclude individuals, and has clear impacts on the health and well-being of people and communities. It comes at a huge social cost to Victoria by eroding our shared sense of belonging and inclusion. The Victorian Government recognises that many communities and organisations have worked very, very hard for many years to prevent and indeed respond to racism. Our government greatly values, and indeed our opposition, the significant and ongoing contribution of Victoria's Jewish and Muslim communities, and we are deeply committed to supporting your safety, inclusion and continued participation in everyday life here in Victoria. We are committed to promoting inclusion and participation for every Victorian, and to absolutely reject, completely reject, exclusion, all forms of violence and discrimination. But social cohesion cannot be taken for granted, and there's still more work to be done to ensure that every Victorian does have the right to contribute and belong. We are committed to action against racial and religious discrimination and vilification, and there is a very clear need for a whole of government and whole of community approach to improve capacity to respond to and prevent racism and discrimination. Preventing and responding to racism is up to all of us. Our government wants all Victorians to feel proud of their identity and feel connected to their culture, their faith and their heritage. And last year, as we know, we launched our Multicultural Policy Statement and its supporting campaign, Victorian and Proud of It. This policy statement reaffirms the Victorian Government, and I say opposition as well, commitment to the ideals of multiculturalism, and provides a way forward for maintaining our strong and socially inclusive society. As an action under the Multicultural Policy Statement, our government is developing an anti-racism action plan, recognising that racism can manifest itself on a person's faith. The action plan will incorporate how people experience discrimination based on religion or faith. And the action plan will identify ways in which the government can work with communities and across sectors to prevent and respond to racism and discrimination when it happens most. As an early initiative, under the action plan, our government committed $200,000 to support a range of community-led projects to reduce Islamophobia and anti-Semitism in Victoria, to be delivered by the Jewish and Muslim community organisations. And we know those funds are going to exactly where they need to go to. And the Bystander intervention program that we're launching today is one of the 7 grassroots initiatives funded seeking to respond and to prevent Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. So I'm absolutely delighted today to officially launch the program which I know the first sessions will be held following this event today, so I better get off quickly. Programs, of course, like this are going to play an incredibly important role. The program itself includes a thorough curriculum, workshops and training courses, which will be held to train and tool up bystanders to take a safe and active stance when observing anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. This does not include taking the law into your own hands, but being equipped with knowledge on how to deal with such a situation. Support for diversity, including one's faith at all levels of society, is vital for social cohesion and obviously harmony as well. And we're really pleased to see the Jewish Community Council of Victoria, the Australian Intercultural Society, Australian Union of Jewish Students, and of course Benevolence Australia working together to deliver this program. I'm delighted to be a part of what I think is really groundbreaking work here today. I very much look forward to seeing how this program rolls out, and of course, most assuredly, the impact that this program is going to have on our community more generally. Thank you, and to those who are celebrating, Happy Hanukkah. Thank you.